Quake is a successor of Doom that would come out on DOS, Windows, Linux, Mac, a Sega Saturn version, Nintendo 64, and then later the PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PS5, and the Xbox Series in a remaster version. So, for this one, it actually is like I said, is a Doom successor, but it's not built around a Doom engine. They actually made their own engine known as the Quake engine. So instead of fully be 2D with all these 2D sprites, they end up using 3D environments like models, worlds, and etc. So when you play this, it kind of is like Doom, but it's a different series entirely. When the console market was starting to show up after success of the Doom games that came out on the systems before, the only problem was that the Saturn version was complicated to make because they had to rebuild the game from the ground up. But after the success of Doom 64 on Nintendo 64, the team behind it, at least the publisher or whatever else, they were impressed with the capabilities of what they did with the game. So they chose the same team to make sure and give them a task to porting Quake on Nintendo 64. Speaking of Quake 64, this one also comes in the package of the Quake Remastered that came out in 2021. So, the only difference here is that some levels have been modified, try to give it to run Nintendo 64, along with brand new music. See, the original music, it was actually composed by Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor, but someone else would take a soundtrack and made their own different one for Nintendo 64, which it is its own soundtrack. The game was delayed on Nintendo 64 so they can try to implement a one-on-one deathmatch. For Nintendo 64, you could only play up to 2 players, which is very unfortunate. But Quake 2 would make up for it, as it would have 4-player deathmatch instead. But thanks to the remaster version, you guys can play locally or online up to 4 players. Speaking of multiplayer, they've added in quite a few new maps to it. It really depended when it came out. Like, if you guys haven't played Quake for such a long time, well, when Machine Games made their first expansion pack in 2016, they included a brand new map. And now I think there's another one they added as well. I'm not an expert on the whole multiplayer scene of Quake. I did play a few matches and I thought they were alright, but I don't know. I don't think it's my thing, but I feel like if you have friends with you, it'd be more fun. There is voice chat support for it, but doing it on Switch might be complicated. Like, if you guys don't want voice chat, you can just turn it off in the options menu and that's pretty much it. But you'll still be seeing the user's name talking. But again, if you guys can't find anyone, crossplay is the option for this game. As simple as that. After this game will come out, it'll have 2 more expansions. But then the 20th anniversary of Quake came around, Machine Games ended up making another expansion pack. But they made the one first, before the remaster version will have another expansion pack from Machine Games as well. There was also supposed to be a Game Boy Advance port for the game, but they ended up scrapping it. The PS1 version was set to be done, but they couldn't find a publisher to get that one running. So there were a few expansion packs in this game. There was Scourge of Armageddon, which is the first one. The second one is Dissolution of Eternity. But then we will finally get a brand new expansion in 2016 by Machine Games, Dimension of the Past. But then when the remaster version came out, Dimension of the Machine was released. The only downside for these Machine Games expansions is that there's no new weapons, there's no new enemies or nothing. But they do some of these missions in episodic style, so you get the idea there. Now, like Doom 1 and 2 on modern systems, they implemented the add-on functionality. This add-on functionality isn't like official add-ons. What they are instead are fan-made mods of the game. Every once in a while there'll be a free download you guys can go across and do that. So Quake 64 is one of the games that are a huge example for it. But automatically there is a CRT simulation effect on there. But if you don't like it, you can just turn it off in the options menu. You can just be done with it like that. But it is cool to see a Quake 64 version be on there, despite there's no Sega Saturn version, which would have been fine. But again, now I think I may have talked about this on Quake 2 beforehand, that the PS1 version of Quake 2 never came to the thing, so it's kind of like the same thing with the failure of like Sega Saturn 1, which I really wish they would have brought that in there, because graphically it was like different, and the looks and textures were a bit different as well. So like I said, these add-ons are completely free, but you'll need a Bethesda account in order to download these things. Yeah, I know. They don't force you to make these accounts anymore, but you're gonna have to if you're gonna want to play these add-ons. As a matter of fact, a new one just got released. It's called Deathmatch Dimension, but that's all I can say. There's so many expansions and add-ons for you guys to play in this game. It gives you a lot to do if you guys are on console or elsewhere. Some of these add-ons though introduces new music, but some music happens to be, or at least they remain the same as the originals. But that's really all I can say about those ones. But for those add-ons, you have to figure out which one's good or bad. But there aren't that many bad ones on there. There's actually some good ones there. I've only found one that's bad so far, but that's all I can really say. I never really played Quake on the PC, but instead I actually got the Nintendo 64 version for myself to talk about. The controls can be a bit weird, but you'll get used to it in no time. You can look around, but you'll have to hold the R button with a joystick, which I find to also be weird, but again, you'll probably get used to it. I don't think you can look up and down as much in this one, but that's all I can tell you. All the weapons remain the same, and all the enemies also remain the same as well. The secrets remain the same as well, but like I said, the soundtrack is completely different than its PC counterpart. Some critics didn't seem to like this version for some reason. They said that it wasn't as great as the PC version. I don't know what they're smoking. It looks almost identical as the PC version when it comes to playing it. In fact, it's actually one of the best looking ones for the system when it comes to one of the best PC ports for the system, besides Rainbow Six on the system, which is also not a PC port. I should mention too that someone also managed to unofficially port the game to the Sega Dreamcast, and that thing also works. Yes, at least it works. As a matter of fact, there's even some Quake mods you can play on the Dreamcast, like Alien Trilogy. I don't know. They made some sort of Alien Trilogy mod for Quake. And there's also another one called The Fallen, or whatever it is. It's not a bad mod. It plays exactly how Quake would be, but their weapon in choice is it's not center, but it's like on the right. It's on the righty side. Now, you guys should also be careful too, because this game also has a buttload of traps, and you won't even see it coming. Especially if you guys were to play its sequel of the Nintendo 64 version. No, seriously, there was a trap that I didn't even know what was coming, and I died from it. But that's the learning curve of some of these games anyhow. But as you can tell, this game does have a huge legacy going on here. In fact, one of the weapons of the game, which is the missile launcher, ended up coming to Team Fortress 2. It kind of just feels like a reskin of the original rocket launcher that you would play as a soldier, but it does have its original camera that is kind of like Doom, which I'll give them credit for. At least the weapon thing is quite different than the rest of the entire game. It's just center, you shoot, you can also reload the weapon, and that's all I can say to that one. So you can easily find it. You can either just buy it for like $1, or you can just unlock it randomly, or at least just try to craft it and see if you guys can get it. But that's all I can say about that one. But at least it was nice for the game to be recognized in Team Fortress 2. And this is quite crazy too, because Team Fortress was originally a mod of Quake before it was remade in the source engine of Half-Life. So I just thought that was interesting to talk about. But speaking what I was talking about the Dreamcast stuff from earlier, this game is such a homebrew magnet. It came to homebrew on the Wii, DS, and PSP. Oh, and by the way, the Wii version lets you use the Wii remote and you can aim however and wherever you want. So I thought it was cool that they implemented the mechanic on an older game that somehow works. I'm not even kidding you. They did the same thing by bringing Quake 2 to the system, but I don't think from looking at the gameplay footage they implemented the motion mechanic thing that great or whatever. But maybe because someone else using a different controller. But yeah, you can actually, from what I've heard, you can use the GameCube or the classic controller to also play on the Wii via a homebrew. So after this also came out, some games utilized the Quake engine for some games like Hexen 2 and some other games that came out, as well as Wrath Aeon of Ruin, which is a newer one, which is even crazy considering some of these games just are kind of similar to another, so it kind of just makes sense. Oh yeah, did I mention that the game is dirt cheap in a remaster format for $10? Yeah, so for anyone who also is on PC, you can play both the remaster and the original versions. Plus, if you have it on PC, you can also mod the game and at least play it as well. So it is cool to play it on PC. So, I think this will do it for Quake. So, I may have gotten a few other Quake games up my sleeve, but they'll all be for another time. I'll see you guys then.